All right. All right. Hopefully everything's good now. I'd like to call this workshop good. Call this workshop of the West Cecil County School Board to order. Suzette, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Carr. Here. Ms. Deal. Here. Mrs. Kaiser. Here. Mr. Burns.
Present.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mrs. Lee. Here. Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mr. Sikich is
Here.
not-
I'm here.
We have our college and curriculum workshop on our report cards. And I'm going to turn over to Dr. Robinson to get us rolling on that.
Thank you, Board President Lee. Good evening. We have a presentation tonight that we're going to go through concerning the 22-23 Wisconsin School Report Card for the West Allis West Milwaukee School District. I have assisting me with this presentation on tonight, Alyssa Barrage, Corey Sack, Joanna Bannon, and Jody Landish will be assisting me throughout this particular presentation. One of the things we wanted to start with on tonight is our strategic plan. We always start here because everything that we point to success should be targeted in the direction of making sure that we are successful on our strategic plan. And so specifically on tonight, we're going to focus on three areas of our strategic plan. One is success in life through college and career readiness. The other one is employee engagement and culture. And the last thing is communication and community relations. All three of these have a direct impact on student achievement. And we're going to go through tonight the presentation. You'll see the connection as we go through and talk about how these areas are important. And we want to kind of add an additional area that we will talk about through tonight, and that's human resources, employees, staffing, and things of that nature. We're going to do this in two different phases. Now, we're going to talk about our data, our present state. We're going to talk about compare a bit from where we were last year to the year before, I should say, 21-22 and to 22-23. We'll compare the two. We'll really go through and do a slow presentation of breaking down the data. We'll also talk about sort of how the numbers come up. We'll put a lot of emphasis on the fact that this is a 3-year look. This is not a one-time snapshot. This is a 3-year evaluation of our district. And so in that third year, this is where we are with our data. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Alyssa to start us off with the presentation.
Thank you. So as we start all of our professional learning across our district with some learning intentions, the focus of our workshop today is going to be on deepening our collective understanding of our district state report card. So that's really where we're going to be diving deeper today. And with that, also sharing areas of celebration within the data and as well as areas of growth for our district. And then we'll be talking about identified next steps, things that we are already currently working on and will continue to work on this year to try to improve student outcomes for our students in West Allis West Milwaukee.
This brings us to our state report card, which went public on November 14th. There's a couple of changes on our report card, just to note. The standardized test for our 9th and 10th graders changed. Last year was the first year we took the pre-ACT Secure as opposed to the pre-ACT Aspire. So that's just one change. The second is this is the first year since COVID that we have 3 consecutive years of achievement data for our report card. When we get into what the scores mean, they take the last 3 years of data and weigh the most recent year higher than the other 2, but then put those together to create our full scale score. So just as we go through this, we finally are using 3 consecutive years with that weighting. And the third piece is an informational piece, not something that we're graded or scored on. But at the end of the report card, there are more career-based learning opportunities that count as work-based learning. So at the end of the report card, there's some information about what career-based opportunities we offer, as well as what arts we offer at our high schools. And so that is included at the end, and there are more career-based options.
And so just to continue to kind of ground us in our state report card, the purpose of this is really an accountability system. So across our state, all schools are scored, or the majority of our schools are scored that do receive a full rating by this system. And it allows us to really be able to identify what are areas where we're doing really well, areas of strength, and then what are areas we really need to focus in on, including like targeted groups within students. And so we can really go down to the student level through looking at targeted groups as well as achievement. And so that's the work that, you know, we'll be talking through here, but we've been working with our leadership team on now this entire year. But now we have another data set that we can use for that.
So one thing to note is the state takes our overall cut score that is taken from some other data we're going to get into, and the scale for those and whether we fail to meet expectations, exceed expectations, or significantly is based on what that score is. In the 21-22 school year, we scored a 54.9. So that had us at a 2-star rating that met few expectations. I am proud of the work that our teachers have done over the past year to take us to a 59.8, which takes us up to meets expectations. This is by far not the end of our work, but it is shows the growth and the work that we've been putting into our students. So that score, that 59.8, is taken from 4 different priority areas on our report card. The bottom 2 in this particular slide, the target group outcomes and the on track to graduate, always count for 50% of that score, each one being worth 25%. So the target group outcomes is how our bottom quartile, or the bottom 25% of our students, when they take all of the scores after their testing, we look at that group and we look at their achievement, their growth, and how they're performing. And that's the way that the state holds us accountable for closing those gaps with our students who need the most support. The second piece is the on track to graduate, where they look at the individual indicators of academic success. So 3rd grade ELA, math at grade 8, our graduation rate, and our attendance for chronic absenteeism, and give us a score for that. So that being said, that's an important piece of our score, but where we really get into the meat of what our score comes down to is the achievement and growth sections that are at the top of this slide. The achievement and growth are weighed differently from year to year based on the percentage of our students that are economically disadvantaged. So when we look here, this year, our students, we had 63.7% of our students were rated as economically disadvantaged by the state. Last year, it was 63.2. So the weighting for our growth area was 43.8. So technically, the percentage of students went up by 0.5%, but it increased the weight that it gave to our growth, which is basically how much movement our students make from one year on these standardized tests to the following year. So more weight is being given to the way that we're making students progress and move through the standards, as opposed to just where they land compared to other students in the state at that grade level. Are there any questions in that station?
That's a nice explanation.
Thank you.
I was just going to add that this is our district weighting. And so every school has a unique combination of what their weighted scores look like for the top half in terms of achievement and growth. So schools that have a higher percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged, their rating will be more dependent on growth than it is on achievement. So you'll notice that difference if you were to dig into every different school's data.
So when we get into the actual, like where our schools landed and what their weighting was, I have provided a copy of this for you in the packet with the report card tonight. It basically breaks down along the left column. You have every single individual school along with our district score. And then the first thing to the right of the name of each school is the 21-22 category that they made based on that cut score. And along with what that actual cut score is. As you move to the right, you see our ratings and scores for the 22-23 school year. Where you see green, we see that schools either maintained where they were for their categorization, or they actually grew up one level. Where you see red in that middle column is where we had schools that dropped. In the far right, is the actual amount of growth on their scores. And again, if they improved those scores or increased those scores, it's green. If they decrease, that is red.
And as a reminder, that's over a 3-year time span. That's not 1 year.
Mhm.
So it's not year to year. This is a 3-year. I hesitate to say average, but it's over 3 years.
Mhm.
With, again, more weighting given to last year's data over the prior to, and then that rolls off every single year.
So if you want to keep looking at the data you have in front of you, I just want to highlight a few different areas of celebration or areas where we did show some strength and made some positive movement. As a district as a whole, as Corey mentioned, we increased by 4.9 points in 1 year and moved from meets few expectations to meets expectations as a district. Really important, definitely something to celebrate, that shift. Hoover, Franklin, Jefferson, and Pershing all exceeded expectations, and Walker significantly exceeded expectations. Hale, Central, Dockey, and Hoover all improved one accountability rating category. So those categories you see in the middle column, meets or significantly exceeds, etc. Franklin, Jefferson, Pershing, Wilson all maintained their accountability rating. So they stayed in the same band. And then, thank you, Joe. And then for schools that increased, a trend that we noticed across those schools was their growth within that part of their pie, which remember, that is the most significantly weighted for each of our schools. They had really high amounts of growth. So they had students that were growing at least a year, if not over a year, within 1 year's time. So that's something that is really important to celebrate. Our teachers are working really hard to support students that have all different needs and supporting them where they are, but also moving them and making sure that they have access to grade level content so we can close opportunity gaps that exist for many of our students. So growth was really, really important, where you see growth on the report card for schools. And then last thing to note as a celebration, achievement is absolutely trending in the positive direction. So it's not where it needs to be. And we're going to talk more about that in terms of like our next steps. But we saw achievement closing opportunity gaps for students, meaning more students were in proficient and advanced than the previous 2 years. And then areas of growth. So there's red on the screen, and you all are very aware there's lots of areas and ways that we can improve as an entire district. So 6 schools lowered their accountability rating category. So that's significant, and we've already taken many steps this year to strategically support those 6 schools. 1 school failed to meet expectations, and 5 schools meets few expectations. We want all of our schools at minimum meeting expectations, but really exceeding expectations. That's like the standard that we hope for all of our students and their families, as well as we want our teachers to operate in cultures where there's a lot of academic success for students. So that's definitely an area of growth. Schools who decreased had much lower rates of growth. So as I noted, when you see a large percentage of students are not growing 1 whole year within their time with the teacher, that definitely points to tier 1 instruction and how we're supporting our teachers with that. It points to our guaranteed and viable curriculum, making sure people know, all of our teachers and educators and leaders know what is expected in this grade level for students to be accomplishing. Our families know. And so that's something that we definitely have been reflecting a lot on as a team. And then math achievement is also lagging behind ELA across our district and in most of our schools. And as you know, this year we adopted a new core resource for K-5. And that we've seen great success so far with our implementation of that. But that is just an example of like steps that we need to take to support and make sure our students have those critical skills early on. So when they're getting to intermediate school, they don't have these major gaps in their understanding around mathematical concepts that then creates bigger gaps when they get to secondary into high school. So those are some areas that stood out to us right away when looking at this data. And as I mentioned, we've really been supporting our principals through not just this data, but all data that we've had access to since the summer. Starting with forward data, we have a lot of beginning of year data. And now we have our state report card data. So we supported them through Corey in particular, did a phenomenal job leading our principals through a training on the report card. We went even more in depth into every single area that's weighted on the report card. So they really understand and feel confident talking with their staff and leading them through conversations around the report card, which they're doing these next couple of weeks. They also did a data analysis protocol. So they looked at their specific data and were identifying, again, areas of success as well as areas of growth in their next steps. And then we've been guiding them again on how they can share this report card information with their staff and families, and then getting ongoing coaching from every one of us in front of you tonight for our principals and their teams. So that is, again, kind of a high level. We wanted to give you enough data, right? And I know many of you have probably already looked at this data on your own because you're curious and interested. And but what questions or wonderings do you have right now around the state report card data?
Before we open it up,
Mhm.
I want to say this as well. This is the what. The next step that you're going to get following your questions is going to be the what now.
Mhm.
So just want to be clear. I didn't want that to come up, but what are you going to do about it? We're coming with that next, but just wanted to say that before you begin your questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Kaiser.
I have to point out Mitchell, that's my home school and my children's school. We have had 6 principals in the 10 years I've been with that school. We failed that school by administration, making it easy to move principals in and out of that school. I sure hope our new principals is here for the long haul. This was not on anybody who's in this room really, because this was another administration. It was brought up at listening and learning sessions. I was really disappointed by that. And I think the disruptions among core staff, not having that clear guidance to support them. And I know we'll be in there, but I also want to just point out, I'm so proud of Central, that giant jump. And I'm proud of all of our schools. I don't want people to be like, oh my God, but I'm very proud of all of our schools and I'm proud of the district for going up. But man, I'm so proud of Central to see that 20.9 jump is massive. And that's a huge to administration there that have been consistent and strong with a clear future where they want to be with our district.
Thank you for pointing that out. I want to comment on Mitchell, if I could. I agree. When you look at schools and the success of schools, when you have unstable leadership, it really has a direct impact on the data, and now it's kind of catching up a bit. And so we did host an instructional round there on, I believe it was last Monday or Tuesday. And I'll kind of talk about that as we talk about strategies, but we have already been digging in a bit and really working with that particular team. And I think we're heading in the right direction at that school. I really do. I really feel strong about it.
Other questions? Ms. Carr?
If we're gonna go with that theory, then man doesn't fit the MO because they've had consistent leadership. And they are down 15.9, so I'm wondering, any insight into that? As, in other words, you're digging deep into this and you're looking into what might have changed or what is the data showing? How do you attribute man's drop?
Yeah, I think when we look at consistency across a building, leadership is one aspect and also teachers are another aspect. I do know that they have had turnover in that respect. I think it all ties together, right? Because you also have to keep staff, right? So retainment is something we're thinking a lot about and how we keep good people here. Finances is part of that. So I do know that's part of it, right? So it's all those different pieces. I do know that team has taken strides, and we're going to talk more about progress monitoring as a next step action. So we don't come to next year and we're sitting here and we're looking and we're like surprised by any of the data, right? We should be able to fairly predict what we expect as an outcome. And that team, the man team in particular, has spent before many of our other schools, a lot of time developing a system around progress monitoring. So I do expect that we are going to see an increase again in that area. They're doing extra testing with our tool FastBridge to progress monitor and see those gaps. But when you have a lot of new staff, you're having to train everyone over and over on core resources and these assessments that we're using and things of that nature. So I think, Jane, to your point, you kind of answered it with like from the leader perspective, but also from the teacher perspective, that's important. And it has been hard to staff there even this year. So that's a major concern for all of us. And we're working and trying to create still to this day creative solutions to make sure the students have everything they need, right? Because we can do so much within our control to support student growth. So we need to continue to work at that, but it is a concern for sure.
Other questions, comments? I have a wondering, I think that it's the fact that this is the first continuous 3-year group that we're looking at. So we're looking at, last year we had 1 year pre-COVID that was included in this analysis.
Yep.
Correct?
That's correct.
And so now we're looking at basically all years post-COVID.
Post-COVID,
during COVID
yes.
or after.
Mm-hmm.
And so when growth is weighted so highly in our district because of our economically disadvantaged students, does that mean that we had such less growth in the post-COVID or during COVID years? And that's why we're seeing this drop off now. Whereas before before COVID, we were doing very well as a district overall. And so those years were maybe buoying us a little bit, except for last year or the year before last, when it pulled us down because that year maybe was a bad year for growth and for achievement. And then we only had the last 18-19 school year to buoy us a little bit. And now we've kind of lost that growth. And so we're looking at only growth in the pre-COVID years. So is it that lack of growth in the district that is actually technically raising our score up?
So I think what's interesting about what you bring up, Mr. Lee, is that a lot of people predicted that our scores would actually go down because of losing the year prior to COVID. So the fact that we have gone up, to me, indicates we are increasing in terms of achievement, and many of our schools are showing actually a tremendous amount of growth. Like I'm saying 70 to almost 100 points. I'm not going to say percent because it's points. So nearly every single student is growing at least a year, if not more. In the case of Man, if I'm remembering their growth data correctly, they had much lower rates of growth. I think it was more around 40 to 50 points.
Yes.
I want to say. So that means that students that were at Man all of last year didn't grow an entire year with their teachers. And so that leads to obviously gaps within attendance and things of that nature. So growth is key across the board. But I don't think that what you're getting at, like, I think it's impressive that we still grew as an entire district and we saw a lot of growth post COVID, right? So I do think the first year after COVID, so the 21-22 scores were probably our lowest that we've seen in like a long time. And that's still part of this rating, right? So I do think over time, especially like a lot of our emphasis on tier 1 instruction and raising kind of like the rigor and expectations around instruction is going to help. But I think that that's a natural part of this progression as we move away from COVID. And that's everywhere that people are seeing kind of that trend across our state.
And our scores are still not quite to our pre-COVID levels. So it's really speaking to the amount of work that we've put in to growing our kids back to where they should be. And really seeing that growth from the last 3 years is, I think, really what helped us bump up a little bit. And so from next year, if we continue on this track, we should continue to see our score improve.
So what I'm hearing is that combination of probably students getting used to being in school again, number one, and doing school things. And number two, the strategies that we as a district put in place to try and help support and gain back what was lost during the COVID year have helped increase the growth last year that we saw in many, not all, but
Yep,
many
in
of our
many.
schools
Mhm.
to be able to increase the score that we see right now.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
I think that's an important message because people will talk about, oh, this isn't anything. And I think as long as we continue on this path, that will shut those people up. But I think for the most part, it's important to have that distinction. We had 1 year post-COVID last time when we had these scores, or pre-COVID,
Mhm.
and then 2 years of post-COVID, with that 1 year being particularly bad scores for our district.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing the recovery from that and the strategies that we put in place to have that recovery. And then hopefully seeing that continued growth as we move forward with those strategies.
And I think having core resources that all teachers are being trained in, being provided coaching in, our instructional coaches, our deeper learning coaches are very familiar with and are like side by side planning with teachers. All of that is really important. From what I understand prior, the math at K-5 in particular,
Mhm.
they were not using the core resource with any sort of fidelity or consistency. And our assessments weren't necessarily tied to it. So I think having two core resources at elementary level that we're using with a lot of consistency is really like, we're hearing this from high school English teachers, like there's so many skills that are gaps in our students' learning, right? That they are trying to fill at the high school level, that they're like, well, I've never taught this before, right? So we all kind of need to team and wrap around our kids as they move through COVID to support at every level. But I do think having a strong foundation is huge asset moving forward. I expect that we will continue to see growth. And in the schools where we're not seeing that growth, we're seeing it in other places. So there's lots to learn from, and we're doing a lot of work that Dr. Robinson and Jody and Joanna will talk about, of like bringing leaders together to learn from each other and be in each other's buildings more, to see the work happening in other spaces so that they can see like, oh, this is how you're going about small group instruction, or this is what you're doing for progress monitoring, et cetera. Because it's important. We have great things happening in our district. We don't necessarily have to go out. We can, but we also can learn from each other here. And we have high levels of growth happening in many of our elementaries in particular. James.
So I'd like to point out that, oftentimes when we start a new resource, K-5 through 5th grade, what tends to happen naturally, historically, is that we have what's called an implementation dip. And that could happen, because it is the first year that we're implementing this math resource. So typically, we might see a dip, and then we would explain that by saying there. But hopefully, I'm hoping that what happens is, because we were not implementing anything with fidelity, that
Yeah.
we see some growth.
Yep.
I don't know how that's going to pan out. I will be very interested in seeing that.
Thanks for pointing that
I will
out.
say about the ends of math, we have a lot of supports that are being provided not only for the vendors, but the schools are also reaching out for extra assistance. So we've done a lot of onboarding with that particular resource and a lot of follow-up PDs with our schools,
Mhm.
and making sure that we're using it in the right way. And so in our conversations and our walks, we're seeing implementation of that resource. And that's comforting, and that we know
Yes.
we're targeting in the right direction.
Yeah, consistent implementation, which is really exciting to see. And that's a kudos to our teachers, our leaders, as well as Corey and Adam Engel have been supporting that implementation. So we will see, but I'm hopeful.
It should be a
Hopeful.
non-negotiable.
And it is a
It is a
non-negotiable. Yeah.
non-negotiable that we, Joanna, you and I we went through where, like, hey, use it, don't use it, supplement, don't supplement. No, obviously, use your creativity and be your own person in your classroom with that resource, but that should be.
Mhm.
So it has to be an A.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel strongly about that.
Other questions or comments?
I do have one more. This is my jam. So I'm really curious because I didn't look at the data from the surrounding districts that are much like us, you know, the TOSA district. And I know that the formulas are different and so growth is different every year based on, I get all that. Have you compared achievement to surrounding districts? How are they faring compared to us? And I mean, post-COVID, how have you looked at that data?
I wouldn't say that we've looked at it across like several districts, but we have looked at our achievement as it compares to the state. And have noticed, like, for example, in third grade ELA, there's about a 12-point gap between where we are and the state average,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I think it is important to know that's where we're starting. And that's where we need to start to see some movement and closing that opportunity gap for our students and ensuring that they have the same, you know, great quality education as any, it doesn't matter what district you go to, like this is what we can provide here. So I do know and in connection with our state where that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Moving on.
All right, let's get to the dirty part here, okay? So what now?
It is. The work.
And I wanted to bring this slide back. You've seen it before. Now we're at the last thing, accountability. We have our data. We have, as a team, gotten together and we've created a model for change and improvement in our district as far as our academics are concerned. What I want to do is I want you to look at this particular document because that's what I'm going to talk through. Even though we have the slideshow, it's a logic model. And for the logic model, we have created an impact goal. Our impact goal for this year is that the number of schools scoring meets expectations or higher will increase from 8 to 14 by October 24. That's the goal. What does that mean? That means that every single one of our schools will at least be at the minimum of meets expectations. That's our goal. Now, would it be easy to set something lower? Absolutely. But I don't believe in setting low bars. I believe in setting high bars. And I believe if we put things in place like we've done and monitored it with fidelity, I think we can get there. So let's go through the logic model. Logic model specifically has leadership actions. So it's divided into 7 different sections, okay? Priority strategies. Corey, will you go back to the original slideshow real quick? Go that, then we'll go back to the logic model. Next slide, yeah. So our priority areas are district-wide instructional practices, school instructional rounds, district-wide professional development plan, data-driven decision-making, hiring and retaining highly effective teachers, student services and supports, and communication, engagement, and perception management. So as you can see, we've kind of tied in some areas on our strategic plan, specifically looking at academics, looking at also our communication and engagement, and then trying to figure out at the same time, how are we supporting all of the needs of our students and teachers? And that's important. We have to understand that accountability, especially with student achievement, is not just a student problem or a student issue. There are adults that have needs, there are adults we have to build their capacity and support them in meeting the needs of students. And so we also have kids and adults who need supports with mental health. All of these things are important, as well as how we communicate and engage with our community and keeping them involved. These are all the priority areas that we're focusing on that are going to drive this particular logic model. So let's go back to the document. Just kind of overview of the document. There are 3 specific sections. Each one of our priority strategies has leadership actions that are listed. They all have lead measures and they all have lag measures. So specifically, lead measures are things that are pretty immediate. Okay. Our lag measures are things that we will accomplish by the end date of October 24. There are some lag measures that may be attainable prior to October 24. Just wanted to kind of give an overview of what we're looking at when we talk about the difference between lead and lag, okay? Now, going back to the presentation. So what I'm going to do now is kind of talk through some of the strategies. And in looking at the strategies, then we have our coaches here. I'll kind of call on them a bit to kind of expound on some things. I'll also call on Alyssa to kind of as well expound on certain actions and activities that we're taking and will take. So just to kind of highlight under the district-wide instructional priorities, bottom line is we have to make sure that we have high quality first instruction. Bottom line. If we are not teaching students the right way, using the right resources, the right manner the first time, they're learning something the wrong way. And it's hard to unlearn things when you've learned the wrong way. We all have learned things, bad habits, and they are hard to break. So we don't want to get into that habit of teaching bad habits. So we've worked on finalizing a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all of our content areas. That's something that we've worked through. Alyssa and her team have done spent a lot of time in making sure that that's available for every one of our core subjects at every grade level, going through making sure they have resources linked to them, and making sure that we are creating processes to look at those things to design quality lessons on the front end. Ensure alignment between deeper learning competencies and guaranteed valuable curriculum. We've created a table where we kind of align things, where you look at the GBC content area, then you look at the deeper learning content next side by side. So which strategy would you use on a particular section? Trying to make sure that they see the alignment between things. And then looking at our core resources, we talked about that a little earlier, how we have into math this particular year, and making sure that we not only have a resource, but there's expectation that that's a resource that we're using. It's not what you used 30 years ago, 40 years ago when you were in the classroom as a student. Like, we are using curriculum and resources that are current and they meet the needs of our students. Something that I pushed on is trying to make sure that we are increasing the capacity of those who we have in our district. And so we'll kind of talk about this partnership with OSWA. Am I saying it right?
Awesome.
Okay, the W's throwing me off. But the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators and developing a professional development series with them. We'll talk about that a little later on. Also, GCT plan. We not only have to focus on the students that are what we consider tier 3, but we have to make sure that we're focusing on improving our tier 1 students. We've heard that time and time again during our listening and learning sessions. What are we doing for our highest achievers? And that means that those students that are scoring at the highest levels should be evident when our report card comes out. That's more that we could be gaining that we're not taking advantage of. And then at the same time, developing a plan to address early literacy. We're going to talk about that a little bit, a little later. But with Act 20, we want to get ahead of that. So we're designing an early literacy professional development starting on next semester, where we're getting ahead of the game in the state of Wisconsin and designing PD for our deeper learning coaches, as well as our reading coaches on our campuses. School instructional rounds. This particular action is something that I will have to admit kind of had some of our principals petrified a bit. And that's not what it was designed for, but it was good because following each one, they all say to me, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. What we have them to do is we give them a template to sort of prepare, and our coaches, our leadership coaches are sitting with them, walking them through the data pieces. So they're looking at data from all different angles, looking at attendance, discipline, looking at forward, looking at FastBridge. See if there's a correlation on their campuses between what the data says as well as the outcomes of students. And then through that, they're creating that particular PowerPoint presentation for us. And on that instructional rounds is 3 hours of impact, conversation, dialogue, and learning. Today, we were at Docky. Started at 30 minutes of a data presentation. We walked classrooms for an hour and a half roughly. We debriefed following each one of those visits. We visited 5 classrooms of his choice. We did glows and grows. After I said to Principal Gales, how was it? Said, I feel a lot better now. I said, well, how did you feel before? He said, I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. He said, but now I feel so much support from you guys because you've given me the things that I needed to hear. And that's what it's all about. It's looking at the work from a different lens. When you're working in an environment, you can think you're doing things so well, but nobody's actually coming from the outside, giving you that same opinion, or even giving you input on what they're seeing. And it kind of opens up your horizons of things. This is what the instructional round is for. It's not an intimidating opportunity. It's an opportunity for growth. I will also point out we had the principal from Central, Brian was there, and Matt was there as well. So now it's an opportunity where we're having dialogue across campuses. So I said to Matt, hey, Matt, what did you see at Docky that you're going to go back to him and say, hey, this is what I saw. Hey, can we implement this? Or can I bring people over to see? What did you see, Matt? So that's what that opportunity is about. It's an opportunity of sharing. It's an opportunity to grow together and just to learn from each other, because as a district, we have to do more of that. We have some exemplars in our buildings. And when I say exemplars, things that are happening in our buildings that other people should be coming to see. And we don't have to pay the bucks to send somebody across the country to go see something we already have going on in our district. And that's what we're identifying on our instructional rounds are exemplars. I pointed them out today. I said, Principal Gales, use her as an exemplar, have other teachers to come see her. That's what it's about. We have to build on the things that we're doing well, and we're doing a lot of things well. I love Docky on a high today, because when I say they're doing some great things with instruction over there, not just the project-based learning either. I'm talking about high quality instruction, dialogue, conversation, discussion, pushback. All of these things are happening at the same time while they're working to move the needle. I'm gonna pivot. Jody, why don't you expound on anything I missed about Docky today?
Green light's on. I'm excited too. I told you that for a couple weeks that they have it going on over there, and they really do. Both Principal Gels and Amanda Hayes are doing a nice job just helping lead the collaborative work with the team. Hot off the press from Docky, but I would say Dr. Robinson, probably if we did one of our schools last week, you would probably say the same thing. I think it's very encouraging to see the growth from all the schools. It's a nervousness before we come in, right? Because it's the unknown. But they're all stepping up with their data literate presentations and the classrooms. And we want to thank the teachers too for inviting people in. We want to establish a culture here that we want to be able to come in at any classroom any day and give feedback and be open to that. And our teachers have been amazing. So.
Go ahead.
So Dr. Robinson and the other 2 principals and then yourself all go into 5 classrooms and you spent an hour and a half. So tell me, what is it that do you have look fors? Do you, I want to know, what is it that you're doing in the
Good question. Here you go, right here.
Okay.
Okay, so each school is to select two problems of practice, okay? One problem of practice is focused on instructional planning.
Okay.
So we're aligning it with teacher effectiveness. So the instructional planning and then instructional delivery is the other problem of practice. So this is a sample right here. This is straight from Horace Mann. Okay, so this is Horace Mann's problem of practice. So current planning is done using the scope and sequence and mention of learning targets. This is instructional planning. So what this tells me is they're working on planning strategically with their teachers and identifying. When you look at planning, looking at scope and sequence, looking at how they're teaching it, how they're assessing it, how are they providing interventions for students and teaching in a variety of ways for the different tiers of their students. But The question is, what are some look fors? Okay, according to the problems of practice. So when I come in your classrooms, as far as planning, what will I see as evidence? Because I want to give you feedback based on those look fors. So this is an example. Standards are included in all plans. Grade level team members are all working together, looking at student data and resources to create small groups, schedule planning time with DOCs and next step planning for student learning outcomes. This is the planning. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is instruction delivery. Okay, this is his problem of practice. Standards need to be referred throughout all parts of the instructional block. Core resources used for ELA and math. Students need to know what they are practicing. Small group practice focuses on specific lagging skills. What are the look fors? When we walk in class, what should we see? Teachers are using core resources for instruction at grade level. Students know what and why they are learning. Purpose. Intentional turn and talks. These are strategies where the teacher is not doing all the talking. Hey, Becker, talk to Deal. You guys pair up. What did you hear? We'll discuss something. And then, okay, what did you get from each other? Tell us what you got. That's a turn and talk. Okay. It's an engagement strategy. It keeps everybody kind of into it. It takes the pressure off of the teacher, puts the learning back where it needs to go on the student. The student is carrying the load. Proactive accommodations and use of materials of tools. Following lesson plan and schedule, that's the scope and sequence, and engagement and access for all learners. These are look fors. Now, with both of them, we had what we call big rocks. Okay, make sure educators use pacing of our core resources for ELA and math and grade level standards are referred to throughout the instruction. Now, that's considered a big rock because if we make sure that happens, so many other things will fall. That's why we classify it as a big rock. You push that big rock off of a cliff, a bunch of other stuff is going to happen versus a smaller rock. That's the point in calling it a big rock. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Dr. Robinson, can I just add, they chose their instructional planning and instructional delivery focus areas based on our educator effectiveness and what teachers are focusing on as well, right? So it's based in our Wisconsin state standards for teachers. Then they picked a focus area, and Jody says this a lot, but like relentless pursuit towards one thing. And that's why that big rock is like really important. Yes, we need to get micro and they're able to identify look fors and we can use that in walkthroughs, whether or not we are there or it's just the principal walking through their building, right? So that's our work. But they need to be all really like focused and intentional with that time.
Does all or any of this include science or reading instructional practice?
It can be any core subject.
Because now that we are not, now that MSD is no longer with Act 20 allowed it, basically, it's also just how we've been doing it wrong for so many years. I'm a massive proponent now of science of reading. I know about 20 members of the district plus at Hingle.
Yep.
We're doing the same training right now, season 1. And I just think, somewhere in the back of our heads, every teacher in this district needs to be trained.
And that will happen. And
Yes, we have
what
a
I'm talking
plan.
about. We're starting.
I just
we're
want
starting-
you either.
Yeah.
Thank
We're
you.
gonna have a sort of a trickle down effect, but we are. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just wanted to point out, we talked about one school earlier who we had some concerns about. We did an instruction around there on last week. And when I tell you they are the model, I believe, for small group instruction, that's Mitchell.
Yeah.
I was blown away. That we need to have other schools come to a field trip through there and see how they're doing small group instruction. That was their problem of practicing, for example, for instruction delivery. So the schools get to choose, what are you working on as a campus? So what is it? Because every school is different, their needs are different. So we have to kind of allow them to, have that opportunity to be flexible and say, okay, this is what we're working on. This is what we want you to give us feedback on. Okay. Joanna, I hadn't heard from you. Do you have anything to add about Mitchell from last week?
No, I think it was, especially having a new leader step in she came in and, I think we were all a little like, well, this first round, let's just go with it. They had done some really intentional work, very and really just, it was impressive. They had their problems of practice, I think, were They also, they also continued off some of the work that they had begun last year. And so I think that that helped. They didn't try and just like pick something out of the, they were looking at their data and noticing we worked on small group instruction last year. However, what is it that wasn't working? And it wasn't really intentional small group. It was kind of like the structure of small group, which is oftentimes kind of what we see at elementary, which is a tweak that we need to look at in all areas. Like, is that instruction really intentional? Or does it just look like small group instruction getting extra help? So they've been working hard at that, building really grounding the entire staff and what they're doing and why they're working on it, bringing their staff into the conversation about what are the look fors, like what is this going to look like? Yeah, I think we were all impressed, and while we were impressed, it was a really great conversation because I think they too, just like Horseman, just like the secondary schools that have gone through that first instructional round, are walking away with, some feedback and some next steps, some of which kind of validates some of the work that they already thought going into the round, and then other things that they're like, okay, we hadn't thought about that. So I think these instructional rounds have already shown to be really helpful and productive conversations, and I'm excited. I think doing them in all buildings is going to just level up our conversations around all the schools.
As well as supporting the coaches in their work at the schools. And so during the instructional round towards the end, we're collecting data and they're trying to create an action plan of supports following that instructional round. So the work doesn't stop right there. They're creating that action plan, and now when they visit their schools, they're working with the school to kind of update and see where are we with these things that we said we need to work on, where are they? So it's keeping track and just monitoring how they're supporting, and then just kind of keeping everybody on the same page with the next step. So that's something that I think has allowed them to be more targeted with their supports for schools, because every school is different. We can't have a ditto approach with schools. We one school over here has a different need, so we have to make sure that we are varying those supports to meet the needs of our schools.
So when these instructional rounds are occurring, are you observing and then meeting with the staff member afterwards, or are you providing, like, how is the feedback being provided? When is it being provided?
So feedback is immediate to the principal. But it's up to the principal to then provide to the teacher, and we coach them on how that happens. We've kind of taken a couple different approaches. So most of them, if I believe all of them, are doing sort of like a staff meeting to kind of do an overview of what they saw, but then they have individual conversations with each teacher to try to talk about those goals and grows. The feedback is done strictly with grows, and on grows we have wanderings. So it's not like it's punitive. This is more of a support. It's nothing that's going to be used against them. All right. District-wide PD is number 3. It's a professional development plan. It's just been very, very adamant that we have to put things in the toolboxes of our teachers, as well as our leaders. We have to develop, and that's one of the things that we've been really pushing since I came aboard. So the monthly leadership professional development is focused on continuous improvement. We're not meeting just to meet. We meet with a purpose. When we have our principals meetings, and I know they're kind of tired of me. I have a calendar meeting with this group right here, these ladies, every Tuesday from 3 to 5. And what do we talk about? We talk about our supports for the week for schools, and we also talk about what's the training going to look like for this coming Thursday, because Thursday is the training for either our principals, our leadership teams, and then our DLCs. And, I'm not trying to micromanage. I just want them to practice on me before they go live. Like every actor, I don't care if you're Robert De Niro or Denzel Washington, you practice your lines. And so I asked them to work with me, and then I'll give you feedback on that. And that's been effective in making sure that we have something that's quality to roll out. Also building capacity of instructional coaches through monthly professional development and training. And we are also working with AWSA in impactful coaching practices as well. That will be starting in January.
Yes.
In providing them providing supports. And I'm talking about specific supports around professional learning communities, around coaching models in particular. What other strategies are we focused on? Early literacy, I know is another one.
Yep, early literacy. I think those are the big ones for like this year where we need to like build some internal capacity around.
And then on C, if you look at letter C, early literacy cohort, we are creating a cohort for spring 24 to develop teacher leaders based on Act 20. Okay, so we're kind of getting ahead of that and making sure that we give our teachers the supports they need to be successful in making sure that they're teaching the science of reading as well. And then create a professional development catalog. I would love for our teachers to have like this document where they know when trainings are coming up, and we have things scheduled weekly, and they can sign up, and then from there we can build series out. So it can be a 2 or 3 training series. But this is how we have to develop our teachers and providing them that support. And so those are the things that we're doing professional development wise from a district standpoint. Go ahead.
Is that similar in addition to like micro credentials?
So we're designing and building this out now. So
Yeah.
I can't fully expound on that yet. But it will be in collaboration with micro credentials.
Yeah, I've asked that same question. And
no,
she's
yeah,
asked it back to me.
Yeah, and so we're just figuring out ways of how to like separate out all the things we want to offer, because there are definitely things within micro credentials, right? As like personal growth teachers want to go deeper with, but there's also we're finding like early literacy, for example, is something all of our teachers need support with, like the science of reading. So trying to figure out how do we provide all of those supports and make that available in one catalog or place where people understand how they can go to grow as a teacher with us. Mhm.
That's good.
I was,
Same question.
I was gonna ask how that
Yeah.
goes in with the micro credentials. What coaching model are the TLCs using these days?
Students that are coaching.
They are doing students.
Mhm.
Great question.
Are we taking into account the possible new compensation model when we're talking about things like micro-credentialing? Because if the new compensation model doesn't have micro-credentials, we still want to make sure that we're not losing that as a learning opportunity for our staff.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure we don't lean too heavily on it, considering it might be in flux.
Yep, Erin and I talked about this last week as we're working on the early stages of building out professional development and figuring out what does that look like potentially more long term. And how do we compensate teachers for their time and the effort putting in to grow themselves? So yeah, that's like an ongoing conversation around the financial impacts of that. And what that would look like even a year from now. So.
Number 4 is data-driven decision-making. This is something that we've spent a lot of time in making sure that we create systems that allow for data to be at the fingertips of our practitioners. And even though this is a work in progress, I want to kind of show you some things tonight to kind of give you a sense of direction that we're going in. We have one that's more of a lead model, and then we're going to show you a lag model. That'll be the lead model will be available. Principals will be trained on it next week. Our lag model will be available around April because it takes more time to extract from Wise Dash. So we want to give you that idea, give you a good picture because you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. Like you have to know where your starting point is. And we have to create a culture where data drives our decisions. But I can't blame them for not really being there if the data is not available for them. Or you don't know how to use the data. So we've been spending a lot of time with that. And I want to kind of allow Corey to go through some examples of the dashboard that we're really working on. She's going to show you the lead version and then the lag. Let's go to the lead first. All right.
So, what I've put together that I'll be showing our principals next week is really what it came down to coming into this role and having not had anyone doing this is as I was trying to learn all the different platforms we have a lot of data, but it's all in a lot of different places and a lot of different people have access to it. So it makes it really hard to get an idea of where any one student is based on all of the different testing and all of the different tools that we use with them. So next week, we'll be using this data dashboard that I've created. I'd show you how exactly it works, but I don't want to show anything confidential right now. But basically, they'd be able to go into this spreadsheet. They'd go right here. They'll have, each principal will have one for their own school. But basically, they use this drop down and they have every single student in their school. It'll also be broken down by grade level planning. But what it does is it pulls up a specific student. In this particular case is a student at Frank Lloyd Wright. You've got demographic information on the side. So this is a 7th grade student. Do you want me to zoom in a little bit?
It's fine. I saw my glasses.
Okay. And what it does is right now we've got forward data that is in WiseDash. We've got ACT data, which is on ACT Success. We've got FastBridge data, which is within our FastBridge suite. So it makes it really difficult to have a conversation about where a student is and where we need them to go. So what I've created here is a way for them to look at this student in particular, see their demographic information, their attendance information. There's behavior data right at the top there, and then any test that they have taken that basically shows where they are. So like you've got their FastBridge information for math and reading over the last 4 testing cycles. In the event that they wanted to go look at another student, they would click, use that drop down, pick another student, and here you get that same information, but you're seeing all of this student's now data coming up in one place. Yes.
This is very similar to EduClimber.
Mhm.
Is that an option for us or?
Just wait, there's more.
All right.
So this is what I prepared while we are doing data validation on our lag measure.
Oh, okay.
So we want to be able to allow coaches and principals to have these conversations as we're setting goals and trying to do progress monitoring with students. But where we're going is we have just started a partnership with WiseDash Local, which is a consortium led by districts across the state. The financial officer is CISA 12, but it's led by a board of different representatives, myself included now, in terms of creating a data dashboard where teachers and principals and everyone have access to see our data. So we've just started the process of data validation. So this is literally just their like sandbox, if you will, for a testing environment to be able to demonstrate what they do.
So this will allow any principal to see
Yeah.
everything, right? For every single student. It'll allow teachers to be able to pull up their classroom. It's just particular to their students, but they can see pulling from multiple data sources. in
This
one
is my
place.
view right here.
And it's all in one place.
Okay.
This would be the view that our team right here would have.
Mhm.
At a district level, we would be able to dive into attendance level data for the entire district. So course data, discipline data, enrollment data, grades, programs and interventions, and our special ed. So this is all the data that we report anyways to the state. This is allowing us to have it in one place so that all people that have this certain level within our Skyward assignments. So it's not adding an extra role or anything. It's taking people at a certain level of security within Skyward and putting it here in nice, usable, you can click on these and create PDFs. You can dig down to student information and pull up rosters if you want. If a principal were to log in, they would be able to go to my school. They'd be able to see the school profile and then have that banner across the top that allows them to look at behavior data for their building and plan PD, have something to access right there at their fingertips. Their DLC would be able to have that same level as they're working on presentations or training for their buildings. Teachers would have their level. There would also be a student level where you could pull up when you're conferring with students. They could see their own data, and as they set goals, they can be like, well, your attendance, look how many days you've missed. Maybe we want to work on that. What can we do to help give that ownership back? So it is meant to be a one-stop shop for all of our data, so everyone can access in one place, and I don't have to create giant data warehouses like that. Yes.
Do we track students who are like tier 3+ or tier 3 who need those interventions?
Yes, currently within our Panorama platform.
Okay, thank you.
So will the dashboard, will we be able to follow like a student journey from school to school to school and see? how they
Because
perform?
all of their information will come from our student information system, which is Skyward. It will upload nightly, so all data that's collected in our system will continue to grow and accumulate in this one place.
And currently, we have access to Wise Dash for our entire district. And so I can look at a new student to us and I can see, let's say they were a multilingual student, I can see their access scores anytime they've access tested in our state. So that's also helpful. Like we do at our district level have access to that data, but the hope is then now teachers will have access to that data for their students, right? Like talk about empowering, you really can see like the educational history of all
Which
your
is so
students.
important when they're new to us.
Especially for students exactly that are newer at intermediate or high school. And we're trying to problem solve around supports.
So there'll be PD on this?
Yes. So we hope to have the validation process done by April. We'll start in the spring by training principals and administration with the plan to have part of our onboarding in the fall with teachers at that point.
Even though I wanted it sooner, the thing is that they have to make sure that the data is correct. And as it comes across, we don't want, before we roll it out, we don't want any mistakes on data. So we want to make sure it's accurate. So they've already told me, yeah, you got to be patient on that one. But in the meantime, we have put in, Corey's worked on the lag version, the lead version of it. And so that we will also train our leaders and our on that particular model so we can have some data available.
So do we envision someone in each school building who is going to be kind of the person that is assisting staff? I understand there's PD, but there'll be questions. How do I do this? I can't remember how to do that. I don't expect that they're going to be coming to you, Corey, all the time to get those answers, especially if it's something they want to do right then and there. So are we building some sort of?
Yeah, we
So
will
we're
build capacity.
We're
yeah.
still working on our implementation plan on exactly what that's going to look like. And that's part of the discussion to build capacity so that it's not 800 teachers all coming to me. So we're working on it.
Yeah, it'll be more of a trainer of trainers and
Mhm.
trying, kind of having somebody on site who's the lead for that would be the ultimate goal, yeah.
Okay, and then also for the new staff when they come in, especially if they're coming in mid-year. To be able to utilize that along with also trying to catch up with being a new teacher in a new classroom with new students.
And I
So,
I
could be
think
a
with the
lot.
timing of this rollout, because it will be towards the end of the year, I think summertime could be a great time to really kind of reset and start training others to be ready for day one of next year. Right.
So
Level couple.
you want to go forward?
Yeah, one more, right. So student services and supports, these are our working with our students in special education, 504, mental health. And so we're putting a lot of resources. And I think the main thing with this particular one is that we provide the training for our staff who are working with special education and making sure that we have those particular position staff within our schools is very important. Specifically, again, professional development is going to be centered around the instruction of ELA and math. It's how do you support inclusion? Inclusion, teachers are not aides, they're teachers. And so that's creating, when you go back to number one, instructional strategies, planning, how does that look? They're planning with the teacher so they know how the lesson is going to look. They know what their role is and what their role is in teaching that. So it's okay for the inclusion teacher to lead the lesson and the regular ed teacher to be a support person. That's okay to swap off. We have to build that. I mean, we have some teachers that do an excellent job of that, but that has to be the model. That has to be the model. Also with our mental health supports, we all know that that's a growing concern. By the day, it's growing, and we are definitely trying to increase opportunities for agencies to come in and support I believe we have, the name of it is, WellPoint is one. And there you go, PSG. PSG is the other one. And we're also looking to add additional supports for organizations to come in and work with our students. We have been approached. And when we're targeting them, we're pushing them to go through the actual MOU process before they can come in our buildings and work with our kids. Okay. Training youth advisors. This is something that I think I communicated with the board specifically around tech and how we reimagine that and looking at what that looks like. I met with the youth advisors on October 30th, was at PD Day. I sat in a meeting with them and kind of talked with them about, you know, what those supports look like. And so that they are a key part of how we reimagining tech. The youth advisors are all they all have a docket of students who have been who have received a pre-expulsion so far. And on this docket, they are tiering those supports. So tier 3 of those students who, even though they're on a pre-expulsion, they're continuing to do things. And those are the students who we will then target possibly for tech if needed. But we're really pushing them to be more proactive in scheduling weekly meetings with tier 3s, sometimes twice a week. The tier 2s once a week, and then tier 1s will be something like every other week, the supports, and making sure that we're providing all of the supports that students need prior to having to be expelled or sent to tech. I think that they were all comforted by the fact that, you know, I see their value and I see what they could be and how we can use them more effectively. And that's been a push with them is trying to be more effective. And also tech, I don't want tech to be, for those students who are already in there, to be sort of I'm pardon me for using this term, but a death sentence. Like it shouldn't be viewed that way. It shouldn't be, you know, where we institutionalize a key. And that's one thing that I've really cautioned. I met with a young man. I'll just tell you a quick story. I'm not gonna say his name. Was coming in the office one day, and I'm in the elevator, and so I'm engaging this young man who's at tech in the conversation. He tells me his name, and he says, "Yeah, I'm in tech, but I'm really trying. I'm really doing great, and I'm trying to get out of here." I said, "Okay." I said, "So what does that mean, get out of here?" He said, "Oh, I'm trying to get back to my school so I can graduate." I said, "Okay." I said, "Are you serious about this?" He said, "Dead serious." He said, I've been working. I'm already past 4 classes this year, and this was like about 3 weeks ago. I'm like, "Wow, 4?" He said, "Yeah, I've already done 4." Okay. I asked him his name again. I said, "I'm gonna go check on him." This student is being targeted for possible return to tech, to his school for tech. This is the ideal candidate that we're providing supports and a plan where this kid sees the hope that, hey, I made a mistake and they're investing in me and not throwing away the key on me. And that's the purpose. I think that we can reimagine tech, but at the same time, you know, we're not using as a babysitting center. And you know, this is an opportunity for us to save kids, but at the same time, you have to want to be saved. You have to want to be saved. And that's the effort that we're really making with tech. And by our numbers at tech, I think we have 4 or 5 that are in person right now. But at the same time, you can see that these kids really want to be here and they want to succeed and do well. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction with student services. With the shortages, hard to staff positions, special ed, with our EAs, that continues to be a challenge, but we are confident because some of our schools that we had a recent vacancy at, we've already identified a person who has agreed to take that job. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. We've already identified an intern that's graduating, he's already agreed to take that job. So we're using the interns that we have in-house and placing them in schools and offering them positions for next semester. So we're investing in our own staff. This kind of brings me to hiring and retaining. I included this in the success of our district because if we don't have teacher staff in our schools, then nobody's going to be teaching them. or there's not gonna be a consistent person providing instruction for our students. And so HR is just like everybody else. Is being held accountable for assisting us with staffing our schools. Bottom line, like everybody has to be all in on this. I've already communicated this. They are creating and implementing an acquisition plan. This is where that they're holding interviews on next week for the recruiter. That will be done by Friday. We come back from Thanksgiving. My dates are running. I think that's the first. December 1st, we should have a recruiter hire. And this particular person will be working with the universities in the area. We've already began to schedule those meetings before school's out to go in and see who else we can get from those programs to join our district if they're able to take jobs. Again, we've held the meeting with our interns on Thursday. I think we had 15 interns that show up out of the 18. And the 3 that didn't show was because Irving had an event that conflicted with our event. All 15, I said 3 times, we want you, come join us. All of them know that they're welcome. And we expect we expect all of them to return in some sort of capacity for the spring. So they may be in a building sub position, but they will be given a term contract to join our district. So this is one way where we have them here. Got to keep them here, and that's what we're trying to do with them. But we're not going to let them leave. But I want to lock the doors the other day while I had them in there. I wasn't going to let them leave, seriously. And at the same time, again, developing an effective HR communication strategy, and so that making sure that people understand the steps and process is so crucial when it comes to HR. If there's an issue at a school where we have a staff member who we have to offer employee assistance to, I've already directed HR. Somebody needs to go out and talk to that particular person to help the principal. Like we have to bridge that gap between central office and our schools. And so that's one of the efforts where we should see it as a distance, but we see it as sort of a team effort in making sure that our schools are staffed and then at the same time retaining high quality teachers. This sometimes comes down to compensation, but some things we can control, like satisfaction, positivity. If they're not happy, they're gonna leave, regardless of the money. Some stay because they're happy. They don't care about the money. We want to control their happiness and make sure that we're responsive in creating a positive culture at the same time. And then just making sure that we have a culture that's aligned with the workplace practices and employment law and all of those types of things, and making sure that we audit these on a regular basis to stay in compliance. I'll pause. Any questions on 5 or 6? Go ahead.
I'm really happy that we're working with our interns. Here's my concern. What supports are we providing? Because remember, we're talking about people they're also learning. So my concern is, I'm thinking of math, for instance. We're down teachers at math. It's great if we can get them in there, but then I don't want, I don't want them overstressed either. So I'm guessing, how are we going to support these interns? I also don't want to put more pressure on our teachers than have to work, to have to work with that. Is that an extra thing if they already have a classroom of, 36 students or whatever, and they have to work with an intern? So I guess, what are we going to do? That's a great idea. I want us to do that, but at the same time, what are we going to do to provide support so then they don't we're not putting them in those positions and they feel like, I'm kind of hanging.
Yeah, so this was actually we left this off when we talked about professional development. We are also creating a new teacher cohort where we're providing consistent supports for these teachers. When even with our new teachers that we hosted last week, we wanted to know what are some areas that you need additional support in. Professional development. I keep going back to PD. It's just so crucial. I even expressed to them, just being transparent, I would not be here right now if I didn't have the support of a mentor teacher. Just would not be here. I wouldn't have made it the first week. And I think that's important. So that's the push that to answer your question directly, is professional development for our new teachers. I think working back, we have more work to do in that area, and I think we've identified that as a team. The next semester, that's going to be an ongoing support, not only to support our interns this semester, but also our teachers who already started this year. So last one, I promise it's the last one. Communication, engagement, and perception management. I said it over and over. I will not allow anybody else to tell our story. As a superintendent of this district, I want to tell the story and tell what's going on. And the efforts that we made so far, I believe we're targeting and going in the right direction. But, you know, even if Dr. Stewart was here, she would say, we still got to work, still got work to do. So a couple of things, the Westway weekly communication, increased online presence through the platforms. Sometimes I think we're on there too much, but there's always people that say, I don't see it. So that means we have more to do. Strategically messaging about school attendance to families. So this is where you kind of go cross departments here, and assisting student services with increasing schools with increasing attendance, and that communication going out strategically to support schools and going and students going to school. The Let's Talk platform. Let's Talk is becoming sort of the go-to for our stakeholders and they field calls consistently. And again, it just removes barriers of communication where, you know, they'll say, someone can't say, I don't know how to get in touch with anybody in the district. And like, we're removing that. And also the district newsletter is sent out on the 15th of every month. So these are just some examples that, and then, you know, I talk so much, so, you know, that's another communication too, where, you know, the visibility, I think is important. You know, I remember Mr. Burns telling me, hey, man, how are you gonna maintain this pace? You know, how are you gonna do it, man? You're gonna burn yourself out. That's what the weekends are for. Weekends are to recharge my batteries. But even like yesterday, I participated in the Rotary Dog Walk. West and I walked a bit at McCarty Park, and I attended the Into the Woods at Hale. And you know, to see that presentation, I was blown away by the talent that we have in this district. Now, let me tie it into the engagement part. To talk with the actors and the actresses after, and for them to say, thank you for coming. We're glad to see you here. Thank you for supporting us. I just think it meant a lot to them. And I even took a goofy picture. I actually kneeled down and I told them somebody's not gonna help me up. But that's what I felt that was important to do that and recognize the work that they put in, because my God, the work that they put in is a lot. It was a lot. I even went up to the orchestra director after and just thanked her, because, you know, they kind of get forgotten about sitting there, like they're supposed to be silent in a sense, right? But it was phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I was just amazed, and I'm looking forward to ELF coming up on the 7th, I believe, 7th of December. That's just an example, though. That's the engagement. That's the engagement where we're working to increase our visibility within our school communities. And these are just some of the various opportunities that that Dr. Stewart has kind of put me out there on. You see me with the coffee with the principal in the top left, listening learning sessions. And in the bottom right is that was our student advisory meeting on last Friday. And you know, I just kind of shut up for a second, and I sat back and noticed that they were supporting other schools. And so in listening to kids from Central talk about things that they wanted to do, and to hear Bronco from Hale say, hey, this is what we're doing, we can help you with this. I just sat back. And I said, okay, well, how are we gonna just not talk about this? How can we actually do this? So they exchange numbers. And then Melvin Johnson said, okay, I'm gonna send an email and get everybody coordinated so we can continue this dialogue. This will be a monthly event that we will hold with our student advisory council, where I just really think that their input is important too. One of the surprising comments they told me, they said, you know, the cell phone policy is not that bad. I said, what do you mean? I wanted him to expound on it. He said, you know, I actually thought it was a bad idea, but man, it's actually a good idea. He said, I'm just surprised that it works. I said, okay, I'll go back and tell the board that. I will. And I thanked him actually for just being honest though, you know, he didn't have to say that. And then the student across from me, she sent me the longest email in May about the cell phone laws. And she said, yeah, it works. I said, huh? I didn't hear you. I said, it works. Okay, okay. All right, so I'll make sure. No, but these are some activities. So you talked about or asked me, well, what's next? This is what's next. This is how we're monitoring. This is not just words we're putting on paper. These are things that, as you can tell by the lead and lag measures, we are monitoring. And you know, this is only going to support the work that we're doing within our strategic plan. But I really want to end on the note of look at the A's, specifically look at accountability when it comes to this particular document. I made a statement and Mr. Becker reminded me last week, he said, you know, you made a statement, you said, hey, by the time this time next year, you guys are gonna look like geniuses. And I said that, I even said it to Mr. Lee, I said that too, I said, I think we are, I'm gonna tell you why. I said, because we're taking a strategic approach though. And everybody's gonna look at the results and say, oh my God, what did they do? We're strategic. We have a plan. And we're gonna monitor that plan. And we're not gonna hesitate. Well, if we need to pivot and make a change, we're gonna do that. But how do we know if it's not working? Because we're monitoring. So I'm very confident in the team that we have. These two ladies to my left, these two ladies in front of me, and those that are not here. We're really working hard to improve the instructional outcomes of our students. And I'll close for questions.
Questions from the board?
I just wanted to thank you all because I actually got a comment from a principal last week who said, I'm seeing administration in my building for the first time in like 2 years. So I think that's important. I think that just myself having experience as kind of like that middle manager where you're kind of, I feel for our principals because you got the teachers you got to work with and then you got administration here. So that's great. I think it's great that they're feeling supported by administration. And I'm glad that you guys are in there and you're seeing what's actually going on. So thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I got a couple. So the first one I wanted to go and ask about is with the hiring and retaining effective teachers. One of the pieces with building a positive culture of responsiveness. One of the things I would really encourage as you guys are working with that is not to get so much into the positive culture of cheerleading, but also thinking about the positive culture of having the meetings where you just get down to work, you do your pieces, you streamline, you know, as was spoken about just before, like having meetings that the time that's allocated is appropriate for it, and it shouldn't have just been an email. Because I think that that's something that gets, once that adds up a lot as a teacher, that becomes something that destroys your positive culture, because I don't want to be here. It was done half an hour. So just kind of thinking about how that approach is, you know, the celebrations are great, but sometimes too, it's just like zoom in, focus in, let's go, let's get done, 15 minutes, we're out. I think the other piece that I was wondering with these observations that you guys are
Instructional rounds.
yes, thank you. With those instructional rounds and going in with the teachers and everything, and you're observing in that classroom, and then leaving that feedback up to the principals. Is that something that's going to then be counting as some of their professional observations? Because
The
that,
teachers?
yeah,
Mm-mm.
because
No, it's not punitive. No.
well, I mean, professional observations shouldn't necessarily be punitive either, because there's also supposed to be kind of those.
Well, I mean, when I say punitive, I mean, you know, if something went wrong, we wouldn't use it against them. It's a coaching. It's strictly coaching. It's coaching from a sense of, you know, let's say we go in the classroom, we step out in the hall after the classroom, after the visit. First question is, what did we see? So we try to norm what it is that we saw, but we also go back to what the problems of practice are. So we try to align those things, okay? We also have pre-work where the principal identifies supports that they've already provided to this teacher, and they kind of tell us what we're going to see. So we already kind of have a preview of what it is, but we also, the point of that conversation though is, so what are your next moves as a principal? What do you suggest? What are you going to do? And then we kind of provide our input from that. And it's just really to support the principal in the work. It's not to really evaluate it's not to evaluate the teacher. It's to support the principal.
Right, and I understand that, but as a teacher, you have admin and your principal coming into your room, like that's high level stress too. And so I would also argue that what you just described as what the instructional rounds are about, are really what those teacher observations should be anyways, where they know they know what's happening. They know what's going to like have that. And it shouldn't be a thing of like, I'm coming in here to like judge you. I'm coming in here so I can see and I can coach you if you need it. And even if there's things that you don't need it, here's some other viewpoints. So I would argue that that's the same thing. And so that might be something to think about as you're going forward, not necessarily.
So I think the work with the instructional rounds is is to develop a culture of coaching. We talk about coaching so much, but we really don't have a culture of coaching in our district. And what that looks like is people are comfortable with getting feedback and and it's not looked upon as just, you're evaluating me all the time. Like that's a fine balance between that. And that's honestly been the feel. Again, we don't even like using the word growth. We just say wanderers. So, hey, have you thought about it from this standpoint? This is where we're wandering. So it's from the standpoint of the type of feedback we leave. It's not even the same though as an evaluation. It's just more of supports for the school and how we can support you in the future.
And then the other piece that I was going to ask about, with all the PD and the things that you're building out and micro credentials and all that other stuff, I think too, if we're looking at a long-term plan for this, again, focus on the teachers and that environment is, if we're developing a long-term plan, we might have some opportunity to add some flexibility. And so that we have some maybe online components, we have some other pieces so that we can open up. So it's not just generally coming in a work day and you have to do a sit and get all day, but I can do these couple of credentials during the evening and then I can work on collaborative planning on those PD days and so we can open up some more.
So, and I agree, we have to be very careful about what we do virtually because it's just not received the same. I know when I do trainings online, my behavior online is different than if I'm in person, just being honest with you. I'm paying a lot more attention when I'm there versus when I'm virtual and I'm doing some other stuff, checking emails. So that's one thing, but also the hands-on supports that we're providing. Our planning to provide with our PDs. Everything can't be done virtual, but if there's an option for it, then definitely.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for all of it to go that way. I was just I work
just
in
consideration.
Right. I work in a remote position, so I understand that the remote and in-person are very different, but if we can add flexibility, I think that would do a lot to develop our positive environment. So
makes a lot of sense.
Other questions? I have one question. And it stems from the perspective that I don't like standardized tests. And I know that a lot of this focus on what we just talked about is trying to get our standardized test scores up because that's a big portion of what our school report card is. And that's what this whole workshop is about. And I understand that. I think achievement is important, but like true achievement to me is important, not just the achievement that happened on the one day the kid took the test. What measures do we as a district monitor for our graduates?
I think there's several different measures, right? So we have FastBridge as like a baseline tool that our ninth graders are all taking, and some of our other high schools, they're considering expanding that. Rocky is having all of their students take FastBridge. So that is one measure where we can see how students are progressing in English and in math. Then we have, of course, like pre-ACT and ACT that we're measuring. But to your point, Noah, we were just talking about that, Joanna and I earlier. There's a lot of different ways we can monitor student progress outside of standardized tests. And that's why the guaranteed and viable curriculum is really important, because then I know in ninth grade English, these are the standards, the core standards I need to be able to do so that I'm prepared for my next year, right? And that's really what shows if you're on track to being ready to, yes, do well on the ACT, but also to graduate and be a productive citizen in our world, right? So that's why the emphasis on the guaranteed viable curriculum, like finalizing those and having those for all teachers that come in so that they're prepared and they know exactly what students need to be able to do and show their learning at these different levels is really important. And we were talking about expanding this idea of like testing or assessments is not just these even 3 times a year progress monitoring. We're getting feedback from students on what they know and what they don't know. And Jane can attest to this as a teacher every day, right? So, and that's the data that we have to be paying attention to so that we can adjust what students need in the real time to provide better outcomes for our students in the long run. And that starts in elementary, but that's also in high school, right? That's at all levels. Go ahead.
I guess what I was focusing more on is what happens after they leave our district. Because a lot of times we focus on, well, they got this ACT score, or they didn't get this ACT score, or they got this FastBridge score or forward exam test score, and this tells them this or tells them that. But what do they want to do, right? We say that we want our students to leave here being prepared for college and career or whatever they want to do in their life. And so do we do any sort of surveying of our recent graduates in the last 5 years? It's graduates from the last 5 years and say, what are you doing now? What did you want to do? Where are you at? Because to me, that's the true measure of success in a district, is if they're doing what they actually achieve, what they aspired to do. Are they in a job? Are they in the military? Are they in an apprenticeship? Are they in school? You know, what are they doing? And is it because that's what they wanted to do, or because that's what they had to do? And to me, that's a true measurement of success for anybody who leaves a district, is they're doing what they want to do, what they want to do with their life, or they're working towards that goal. So I know that has nothing to do with this testing. The state does not measure that. But to me, I mean, they're using that as a proxy for success. But what is the reality of that? Is that really a proxy of success? And that's what I'd be interested to know if we could do. And I understand it'd be not scientific, because it'd just be what people would respond back to. But it'd be nice to have some sort of survey to see, like, how happy are the people who leave our district when they graduate.
Yeah, and I think we've been having conversations, Jody and I, with Steve Carr around what are our options for high schoolers? What opportunities are we providing within our district? How are families made aware of all of those different pathways and opportunities within our district? And what ways do we maybe want to potentially pour into and expand as more opportunities for our high schoolers? So when they leave us, they have an associate's degree, or they have several credits that will transfer to other districts, or they have opportunities to do an apprenticeship and they have that set up for after they're done. My family is largely in the trades, and so all of them are welders and have, right? So like, how are we creating those opportunities and getting them as much credit as possible with us, so that when we survey them, they can say, yep, I got like all these things I needed and I had my own path. We also are in the works of doing something that's not on this list, but one of the many things we're doing is academic career planning and supporting that from K through 12. And part of that is, every student has like a plan of what they're doing. And Steve Carr is working on that. That'll come to you all again in the spring as like a formal plan adoption. So that's also in the work. So there are several pieces, and it's been something Jody and I have been kind of talking about of where do we go next, given what opportunities we have now. Where do we want to maybe expand or pour into more so students have that? Yeah, go ahead.
There's a program, I can't blank on the name right now, where kids can take surveys and kind of like helps drive like what could they do with their careers and kind of.
Naviance is one program.
Yeah, we use a different on my school, but it's if I remember the name, I'll let you know. But we do have a transition coordinator at my school that actually follows our students' paths as long as we are in touch with them. I know we're a large district.
Yeah.
I'm coming from a small school in thing. But,
They do have something like that because both of my older sons took it, where they can go on
Mhm.
different questions and it gives you a different idea. of
Yeah.
Careers that are good for you.
And that's part of the
Look into.
academic career planning.
Yeah.
That's part of it is career exploration.
Yeah.
We've even explored, we're piloting some career exploration, online. I'm gonna say it wrong, but VR headsets, right? We have VR headsets. There's program that Hale is currently piloting where they can like go into like a welding shop and like experience it through like a VR world lens. So there's like different ways I think we can get at students having opportunities, including real world opportunities to go and explore these different pathways. But yeah, I think it's a definite need because you ask a 15-year-old, what do they want to do? We need to make sure they know every option available to them in the world, as well as like their
Zello.
families are aware. And Zello is what we
that's
use.
what we use.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that is
Thank
what
you.
we use. That's part of the academic career plan.
Yep.
And so, like I said, everyone in the state is provided to update like their plan on a regular basis. So that'll be coming to you all in the spring.
Great.
Steve Carr is working on that currently.
I think it's a better measure of
Success,
success.
another measure. of
You're
success.
preparing someone to do
Mhm.
what they want to do. And I don't care what their ACT score is. If they didn't need ACT
Well, and especially
skills, then
because there are a lot more, especially like with having a senior this year, where there are a lot more graduates that are wanting to go into like trades and stuff versus going into a 4-year school. So, like my son, I mean, he took the ACTs. I can't really say how much effort he put into it. He
Mhm.
took it because he was supposed to, you know what I mean? But at the time, he kind of already knew that he wasn't gonna be going into a 4-year school, but I was like, take it anyway, you never know, but he's like, well, I take it if I need to, so, and there's a lot of his friends that are wanting to go into the trade. So I do like that idea because I do think it would give a lot more accuracy to that other half or a good portion of those
Mhm.
kids,
Yeah, Amy.
I think Gene had her hand. Sorry.
Again, I mean, I feel like my brain is full enough and I don't wanna. Digital portfolios, where are we with that? I know at one point administration, that was something that you were pursuing. Because that is another lens.
Yep, and we're continuing with portfolio. So every school is on a slightly different track. I will say some, we gave them 2 years to kind of get to more full implementation of everyone being able to use that as a way to show their learning. So we're continuing on that and also monitoring and getting feedback from principals, especially at the elementary level, on the feasibility of like the platform and how easy it is for elementary. So we are monitoring and trying to assess as we go, but for right now, that is still happening. We have a cohort learning experience on professional development days that's focused on that. So we have another, I don't know, Jody, how many are in that? 150 teachers? Something like that. So, I mean, that's quite a large percentage of our teaching staff. That's part of that cohort. We did that last year as well. So that is another way to demonstrate mastery. All of our schools are also doing presentations of learning, which I know many of you have been to over years. But that's become a pretty standard regular practice, which is exciting to see multiple times a year in most of our buildings. So to that point, there's a lot of different ways students have opportunities to show what they know outside of a test. Ms. Deal.
That's right. I just was I just agreeing with everybody here. I think, Noah and I actually discussed this last week or something, but like, I think we get a lot of messaging around like, we're not preparing our kids. And I think it would be interesting if we did something like this, where we could say like, are you where you're at? Because I'm thinking about my 19-year-old where the district did meet his needs, but he's on a different path than maybe a kid that goes to college. And I think so sometimes, I kind of think that would be a good narrative to have. It's like, okay, a lot of people go, oh, your scores are this or that, but it's like Noah said, are we preparing them for what they want? Like, are we meeting their needs? Even though on paper, maybe it just says this score is saying, here we're at, but are they actually getting what they need? So when they leave here, are they feeling prepared? Like I can, continue that type of thing. So.
Yeah, we could say X% of graduates are achieving their life goals 5 years after graduation. Like that's a sort of thing that I'm thinking of, whatever that number is. And then also I had an opportunity to get feedback from graduates saying, I found when I left, I was missing this, or like this would be helpful, and that can help guide some of the things that again, that maybe are outside of strictly academic, but are life skills that maybe we're finding that students need. And so that's just kind of things that I'm thinking about, because you're looking at our scores, you think we're just graduating people who don't know how to do anything, but I know that's not true. And I think that it's a poor narrative that we have in our community. And I'm trying to think of additional ways that we can show that success that are outside of these kind of standardized test-based measures that are basically what everything is based off of nowadays.
And I think part of it is what Dr. Robinson said earlier of like telling our own story and narrative, and you all are doing that. You're in the community doing that. We are also trying to do that, highlighting students who have different paths and are achieving their own like version of success and whatever that looks like. So I think we need to continue to do that. I do think that we're heading in a positive direction, both in terms of achievement and growth. So that is trending in the right direction, but it's going to take a lot of work. Continuous improvement is it's a heavy lift. That's what we're trying to do here, right?
Say for the record, throughout this hour and a half presentation, we did not say the word assessment one time.
I wrote it.
So that was intentional. That was intentional, that we did not mention test. Now, the logic model, of course, is built around the forward exam and the accountability for the state of Wisconsin. But the strategies we're using are focused on high quality first instruction. High quality first instruction. All right.
And I understand we're not going to just get away with this, but it's that we have to look at this and we have to focus on it. And obviously, we want everyone to be able to read and do basic math and things like that so they can succeed in life beyond that. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that a test does not indicate success
No, that's.
by itself.
Right. No, I agree.
All right, additional comments, questions, or concerns? Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I want to thank all of you for putting all this together and
Yes.
this presentation.
Thank you.
3 years on the board, and this is kind of one of the first times that I feel like I'm involved and know the plan that we have and the stages that we're going to be in. And so I really appreciate that, because now I can have, there's questions, there's pieces that I can go back to, where are we? And we can really track that. And I think that that'll be really helpful for the public as well. This is really good. So thank you to all of you.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's our job to ask a lot of questions, so we appreciate it.
All right, if nothing else, I'm going to close our workshop, but
Oh.
he usually waves at me. Jeff, do you have any questions? Brandon's very concerned.
We're all worried about you, Jeff.
I was like, usually he waves and I see him.
Usually we
His
check.
whole, all you see is Jeff hand. He says he's good. He's all right. But thank you, Mr. Burns, for checking in. Mr. Sikich. So I'm going to close the workshop and thank our presenter this evening for taking the time putting this together. Echo Mr. Burns' sentiments regarding this. I've been on the board for I'm working on 7 years now. And this is the first time I think we've had an actual workshop on the school report cards. We've been given information about it, but not an actual workshop to go through. This is what is happening in our district. This is what has happened. This is what is going to happen to address it. Things on a more direct level. So I do thank you for that. So I'm gonna close our workshop this time and thank you. But before we adjourn and turn off and we have to switch over for our closed session, I am going to ask for a motion in a second to convene into executive session in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.85. Parent 1, Parent E, to confer with the district legal counsel and to deliberate regarding the potential sale of school district property.
So moved.
Second.
Specifically at the roll.
Hey, now it's out who's the loudest.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Miss Steele. Yes. Mr. Burns.
Yes.
Mrs. Carr,
Yes.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Sikich will join us.
Thumbs up.
Excellent. And President Lee.
Yes. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll go into the closed session.
Facility planning process, which began in 2020. and was finalized in 2021. In April and May of 22, the WM School Board hosted workshops and planned school consolidations to discuss multiple scenarios that align with the district's facility capacity with enrollment. On June 6th of 2022, our school board hosted community meetings to consider administration's recommendation of consolidation of Longfellow Elementary. Following the meeting, the school board voted yes to the consolidation of the school at the 22-23 school year. Following the decision, planning began to facilitate what would result in the closed school. The decision was made to hold onto Madison Lane properties, but further to investigate a sale of Longfellow Elementary. On July 5th of 2022, market opinion value was commissioned for the Longfellow property. This determined a valuation estimate for the sale of the property. On December 20th, 2022, a community visioning meeting was held for Longfellow neighborhood to weigh in on what they would like to see the property become. On March 27th, the school board update on school consolidation was held where recommendations were given to the use of Longfellow. Following the update on April 4th, the school board agreed with the recommendation Longfellow would be sold to the intent that following the sale, the property would be redeveloped and put on the West Dallas, West Milwaukee, or the West Dallas community tax rolls. An RFP process was started and the two finalists for the sale of the property, finalist presentations were held the week of November 6th. Two finalists were given an opportunity to submit final purchase proposals. Both finalists responded November 14th. Housing for All submitted their final purchase price proposal at 1.25 million, contingent upon the number of units at 50. And that is our recommendation to the school board tonight, that they accept that offer from Housing for All.
Okay. And that's contingent upon these terms of sale here.
Yep.
Which will be posted as well. So, are there any questions? Or any discussion? Otherwise, I would look for a motion and a second to approve the sale of Longfellow Elementary for $1.25 million, subject to adjustment to the joint venture known as Housing for All for the future redevelopment of the site.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? I'll be abstaining from the vote. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Mr. Sikich is a thumbs up. Opposed? And one abstention. All right, thank you very much. That ends our action items for this evening. If you could, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Sikich? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.